All set? Welcome. I'd like to call to order the annual meeting of the town of Sevastopol for Tuesday, April 16th at 6:01, it looks like. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. We do have an agenda. I'm assuming that most of you have probably grabbed one. And basically, we're just going to use the agenda as a process for going through this meeting so that you have some idea of what's coming and when and where it might be appropriate for you to raise issues or ask questions or whatever might transpire. First thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce ourselves, and we'd ask you to do the same so everybody has a feeling for who's here. And we'll start with the lady on my right.
Amy Flack, Clerk Treasurer, County Road P.
Randy Nesbitt, Town Attorney.
Jim Nellen, Supervisor, Rory Lane.
Dan Wolfel, Chairman, Bark Road.
Linda Wade, Supervisor, 5075 Bluff Court.
John Stavnes, Supervisor, Whitefish Bay Road.
John and Janice Walton, Glen Drive.
John Blonick, I live on Pine Tree Road.
Elizabeth McMasters, I'm the Town Auditor.
Kyle Litkey, 4838 Bay Shore Heights Circle.
Zahn, Gordon Road.
Jim Ferry, 936 Quincy.
Ruth Schultz, 39055 Glidden. Lynn Zawoyski, 4704 Martin Road.
Carl Schultz, 3955 Glidden Drive.
Steve Woods, Sturgeon Bay.
Joan Nellen, Lauren Lynn. Arlene Wilkel, Bark Road. Susan Q. Byer, South Cape Point Drive.
Mark Hain, Peterson Road.
Chuck Tice, Sturgeon Bay.
Jean Tice, Bay Shore.
Nathan Spawn, 4920 Valmy Road.
John Neal Jr., 4451 Whitefish Bay Road.
John Neal, Whitefish Bay Road.
Steve Tippler, Valmy Road.
Kimberly Danielle, Whitefish Bay Road.
Derek Demise, North Country View Road.
Kaylin Montevideo, Sturgeon Bay Fire.
Gary Londo, Peverly Road.
Richard Verley, 3959 Glidden Drive.
I think we know who the last person is.
Laddie Chapman, Glidden Drive.
Thank you and welcome again. I should make note that there is an empty chair here this evening, and if many of you have not heard, a week ago today, Tony Hain passed away unexpectedly after having undergone a lung transplant. We really expected him to be here tonight, and it's a great loss. There will be a service for him in early May. If you can attend, that would be great, or express your condolences. Tonight we have Mark Hain, his son, here, and will take over a little bit of Tony's responsibilities in this meeting. So thank you for volunteering to do that. And I'm terribly sorry to hear about Tony. So with that, let's move on to the minutes. And those will be the minutes of the previous meeting on April 17th, 2018. And a motion can come from the floor or from the board.
That we approve the minutes for the annual meeting, April 17th, 2018.
All right, we have a motion from Chuck Tice, and he's second on that.
I'll second it.
Second by Laddie Chapman. All right. Motion on the floor to accept the minutes from April 17th, 2018. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is the swear-in of elected officials. And I think that's going to be handled by our town clerk treasurer.
It will, so I need Dan Wolfel and Linda Wade to stand. Please raise your right hand.
Sorry.
And then state your name, please.
I,
Linda Wade.
Having been elected to the office of Town of Sevastopol Supervisor or Chairman,
Town Board Supervisor.
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
And the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin.
and I will faithfully and impartially
And I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the
to
best
the
of
best of
my
my
ability.
ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Now I know why I have to do this meeting. All right. Special reports. There are 3 special reports on our agenda for the evening. The first one will be by Elizabeth McMasters, who is the auditor, who does the annual audit of our financial statements. And Elizabeth, would you step up to the podium and take us through the highlights?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. The first thing that I want to point out is on page 1, this is kind of the goal of our audit is the independent auditor's report. It kind of brings everything together, and it is our opinion on whether the financial statements are presented fairly. Down near the bottom, it says that the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all materials respects the financial position of the town. So essentially it means that the town, we provided a clean opinion in regards to the financial statements. We also, as part of our audit, provide an internal control report over the financial statements. It's our test of compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts and grant agreements and other matters. On page 3, this is the government-wide statements. The main thing that I want to point out is under the liabilities, it shows the long-term obligations that the town is on the hook for, essentially. The biggest thing, and I can see over there, you guys have a board saying that the obligation that the town usually had is being paid in full in 2019. So as of December 31st, there's only one payment left, and in 2019 you guys will be paid in full, which is a good thing. On page 5, the one big thing that I want to point out on here is if you look, I don't know, 3/4 of the way down the page, there's a section called fund balance. This is essentially the accumulation of revenues and expenditures throughout all of the years of the town. This year, you can see that the total ended up being about $359,000 in the unassigned fund balance. So that's essentially what the town can use in future years. And if you compare it to 2017, it had a very similar amount, which essentially means that all the revenues that the town expected to take in offset for any expenditures that the town had, and so you kind of evened out at the end of the year, which is a good thing. You know, you don't want to be spending more than what you're anticipating to take in, so that's a good thing.
Elizabeth?
Yep.
Would you prefer a question or two as you go? Or?
Sure, yep.
Okay.
Okay, last year's audit, Elizabeth, we had the fund balance, we had restricted, we had committed, which included our reval, our comprehensive plan, asset contingency, invasive species, or whatever, and we had the unassigned, which was actually our room tax and our general funds. So I noticed that this year, instead of 3 categories, we actually have 4 categories. So you've apparently split out the room tax accumulations into the assigned.
Yes.
So
yeah,
that's probably a better procedure to have it spelled out.
Yep, and those amounts are essentially, it's saying that it's just being used in a future budget, essentially, so. Anything else?
Good, unless someone has a question. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, the next thing that I want to point out is on page 9. This gives a little bit more of a glimpse of what the budget to actual looked like for the year. One of the things that I want to point out is under the expenditures, under public works, it was originally budgeted for about $344,000 for maintenance, construction type projects. The town didn't end up spending that much, so they had some cost savings that attributed to being able to carry out that level fund balance for the year. The next thing that I'd like to point out is on page 15. This is a required disclosure to show what the town, essentially the expenditures that were maybe a little bit overspent for the year. It's not meant to be like a slap on the hand or anything like that. It's just a disclosure that's required. And what we want to point out is that, you know, those expenditures were funded with available appropriations in other accounts. So those types of things offset each other. There wasn't anything major there. On the next page, page 16, this kind of talks about the different disclosures with cash and different requirements. One of the items that we usually point out is that the town carried quite a significant cash balance at the end of the year, and that puts it greater than the insured limits that are automatically provided. The only reason for this is because of the advanced tax collections that are eventually remitted to the municipalities early in January. So it's one point in time, and you know the money flows out at that point. So it's not anything to be concerned about, and it happens every year. So
I might just since we have the county treasurer, the issue that Elizabeth is referring to obviously is that when we do tax collections, we accumulate way too much money, and it's parked for a short period of time. I know. It's only parked in a bank in our name for 30 or 45 days before it goes to somebody else. But, and I hear her concern. I mean, obviously, if the 1920s restruck, we'd be in trouble. But what does the county do with its excess funds? Do you distribute it over 10 or 15 accounts? Concern about the FDIC?
I don't do the investments, but our finance department does distribute it in various accounts. Linda probably gets that every month with the county where our funds are allocated.
Okay. Well, we'll maybe check into that a little bit further and see. I'm not overly concerned, as I don't think you are, but you know, it might be something to just look at. Thank you.
we can certainly talk about that too, because there are certain ways to make sure that you're hitting those limits in the best way possible too. So that's
that'd be great.
Certainly something we can help with. The next item that I want to point out is on page 18, towards the bottom of the page. This is the legal margin for any new debt. The main thing is you can kind of see there's only one payment, which you guys paid off in 2019. So if the town wanted to take out $35,670,465, they could, but I don't think they have any intent of doing that anytime soon.
We're thinking about buying a school. Right.
On page 23, and a few pages back, this is where it talks about the Wisconsin retirement system, which is something that the town contributes to. It's a state plan. The main thing to know about this is that the state of Wisconsin is in a really good position in that they hover between 99% funded and 101% funded. So some years it's, you know, a slight liability, some years it's a slight asset. For Wisconsin, there's a lot of disclosures that we have to put in for something that's not a huge deal. For states like Illinois, where it's severely underfunded, that's where it becomes problematic. But the main thing to know is that Wisconsin hovers on that level each year, and that's a good thing.
That's on page 23?
23, correct. Yep.
You might not
18 to 23 are missing in this report. That are
I didn't print.
pages 16, there's all kinds of pages missing.
Steve, I didn't print the entire report for everyone. If you'd like the entire report, I have it in my office.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think we all should have it.
On page 24, which I'm not sure that would be one that Amy would have printed, but this talks about the minimum general fund balance policy. The town overall has a policy to carry about 15% of the expenditures. With the town's unassigned fund balance that we spoke about earlier of $359,000, the town is well over their established policy, so they're in good shape that way. On page 25, near the bottom, it discusses any upcoming upcoming accounting pronouncements that are coming out that could potentially affect the town. There is one coming out in the near future. It should have minimal to possibly no effect on the town. We'll take a look at that as being the auditors for the town, and we'll work with Amy to implement that if that is what's necessary. But it's one of those ones that's pretty minimal. Nothing should change much with the statements, so we're not concerned about that. On page 27.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Did we get a copy of the full
Sure.
immediately, so we have the information in front of us?
We'll be happy to. We don't print all of it.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I just said we don't print, and I said, yes, you could. So what am I missing?
There's a lot of pages missing that we are not following.
I understand.
Well, it's public knowledge.
John, as I said, we will be happy to supply you with a full copy. If anyone else feels that they would like a copy of the full document, you're more than welcome to it. We just find that for the most part, it ends up remaining here, so we printed generally the stuff that most people are interested in. But if you'd like it, it's absolutely available.
Everyone else is good? I can do that. Yeah, you're welcome.
Elizabeth, on page 5, I believe, special deposits under liabilities and deferred balances. I think I'm on the right page. Is that our pension deposits that, let me find the page here. Here, page 5, liabilities, deferred inflows and resources. Special deposits, 8,860, is that our deposits with Wisconsin Retirement System? Or
No.
federal taxes, or?
The special deposits is, and Amy's gonna need to help me with this.
I didn't hear the question.
No, that's okay, sorry. The special deposits that we're showing of the 8,860, that is those $400
Occupancy bonds?
Yes.
Occupancy
that's
bonds,
exactly
okay.
The Wisconsin Retirement System, the only thing that you will see on page, essentially gonna be page 7, is the expenditures that you guys incur. Nothing for that liability or asset is recorded on the fund statements. That's gonna be on the government-wide. I can point those out on page 3. If you were to flip to that page. And if you look up in the assets, you'll see a net pension asset of that. Yeah, exactly. So that's where it flips to the liability some years, and sometimes it's an asset.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
okay. Anything else? Yeah.
On page 5, your 135,000 that you touched on before, that was not.
I'm sorry, it's hard to hear. What's that?
The 135,000 on page 5.
Yes.
That was not present for 2017, but is now in the assigned.
Yep.
Is that the same as what's on page 24 for the assigned for subsequent years?
Yes. Yep. Yep, so we essentially take what's disclosed in those statements and we provide a little bit more detail. So you can see on page 24, in the committed, right above where that assigned, it gives a little bit of a better description of what each of the items are that are committed. Same thing with assigned. So it just gives a little bit more detail in those notes. Thank you. Yeah. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Anyone else have any questions you'd like to ask of Elizabeth?
And then, as I get towards the end, on page 27, this is a much more detailed breakout of the budget to actual. So on page 27, this is strictly just the revenues. So a few of the items that I wanted to point out is in the top section in taxes, you can see the public accommodation taxes, which are the room taxes. So you guys collected more than what was anticipated, which is a great thing for the year, 15 grand to the good. Towards the bottom, under the miscellaneous, you'll see there's interest on investments. That number was a lot higher, even compared to 2017. You can see that interest went way up. There were favorable interest rates this year. We're seeing that across all the municipalities, especially with the investments in the local government investment pool. So that was a great help to the revenues this year for many municipalities. The next page, on page 28, this is the same type of format. This is just for the expenditures now. And as I mentioned before, if you look in the public works category, about 2/3 of the way down, you'll see the road maintenance and construction, and that's, you know, there were $78,000, you know, under budget in what was going to be spent, so didn't spend quite as much on road projects as anticipated.
That was due to the county not being able to finish paving because of the weather, so we carried those funds over to this year. The one thing that the auditors do is they correct all of our entries back into the calendar year that they're auditing. So we may not pay the bill till 19, but you'll move the expenditure back into 18 or whatever time frame is appropriate. So based on the accounting standards, sometimes it gets a little confusing because you're wondering when you paid it, anyway, that's what happens. So.
On page 32, this is where it discusses any findings that we had as part of the audit. One of the first one is the segregation of duties with the clerk treasurer position. For a municipality of this size, it's very, very rare to see two separate positions. It's simply not needed. And so it's just a finding that we're required to disclose. It's very, very common. On the next page, does somebody have a question? There is the second finding, the preparation of the annual financial report. This is mainly due to the complexities of recording all the different long-term obligations in those first couple of statements that we were talking about. It's a service that we provide to many, many, many of our clients, and it's something that the training and the know-how, it's just we have an entire team that's working on it all the time, so it's a finding that's very, very common in reports. And the last one on page 34 is just adjustments to the town's records. That's primarily just for tax roll adjustments. It's very common, as I said, with the other findings, and it's something that we work with Amy every year, and so we worked with her again this year. Hopefully, depending on how the rest of the audit goes, I'm anticipating that finding will probably be gone next year. So that's a good thing. Amy's been working on it. So, and is there any other questions or anything else I can answer?
Any of the board? Any additional questions? Anyone else from the audience? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the annual fire report from the Sturgeon Bay Fire Department. And this year, instead of Tim Detman, we have his assistant chief, Kaylin Montevideo.
So I'm not going to read word for word what the report is. There's copies up here, I think, still, if anybody needs a copy. I'll just kind of breeze through it. If you have questions, I will do my best to answer them for you. So, in the past, I think last year was the first year we did a joint report with the two townships that we cover, as well as the city of Sturgeon Bay, and we did that again this year. We added a little bit more to the report, comparisons, more duties that we do. We found as we went out and talked to the public that they really didn't know everything that we did as a fire department, so we tried to expand on that in our annual report to answer some questions. So first page of the report is just a letter from the chief, kind of a generalization of our department as a whole. We always include our mission statement and our values. The next page. The third, I don't have the pages numbered, I'm sorry, but if you continue to follow along. Our department staffing, so our department is staffed with a fire chief and an assistant fire chief, that's me. We work a 40-hour a week, Monday through Friday week, and then we have 3 shifts of 4 full-time firefighters that work 24-hour shifts. So we always have 4 firefighters on duty, 2 at each of our stations in the city. And then we have paid on-call staff, so that would be the part-time firefighters that we call in for any additional incidents that are needed, that we need additional help for. And then we added some pictures just to spice up the report a little bit. So the next page is our stations. So our main station, Station 1, is right downtown on Michigan Street, 421 Michigan Street. That is our offices and our main station, staffed with a minimum of 2 firefighters at all time. And our second station is over on Oxford Avenue by the water utility plant. So also staffed with 2 firefighters, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The next page is our apparatus. The big change in 2018 was we took delivery of a new 100-foot rear mount platform. And I think that was our newest, our only change from previous years in this report. The next page is our coverage area. So we cover the city of Sturgeon Bay, the town of Sturgeon Bay, and the town of Sevastopol for fire protection. The town of Sevastopol has their own EMR, first responder group. So although you'll see in the report when we get to the incident type that we do respond to a few medical calls, for the majority, we do not, because they have their own first responder group that is called out to those medical emergencies. The next page is just a summary of our incidents. So you'll see town of Sturgeon Bay, we run mutual aid throughout the whole county, so which means if somebody at the tip of the county needs our help, somebody at the south part of the county needs our help, we go. Likewise, we receive mutual aid from other departments as well. So I don't need to read them all to you. You guys can look at them if you have any questions. And just a graph to show you kind of the breakdown of where the majority of our calls are, which is the east side of Sturgeon Bay, the city of Sturgeon Bay, and then the west side of Sturgeon Bay. And then at the bottom of that page is our response times, just in the jurisdictions that we cover. So city of Sturgeon Bay, town of Sturgeon Bay, and town of Sevastopol. I didn't look at the comparison from last year to this year as far as response times, but I believe they're very similar. So. If you go to the next page, this is our incident type. So this is complete calls that the city of Sturgeon Bay Fire Department responds to. So the second column would be the most interest to you, 85 calls in 2018 that we responded to. So everything from cooking fires, there are a couple medical calls, 8. So that would be, for instance, if just more help was needed, our county paramedics would need more help, they could call us. There have been times that they may have not had a first responder respond to the call and just needed a little additional assistance, so they'll call us out of the city to come help them. So the next page is just a summary of our staff hours. We just pulled out the kind of the main highlighted things that we do on a day-to-day basis. So community service, fire inspections, that takes up a lot of our time. Training, as you can see, that takes a lot of time. Pre-plans, we do a lot of public education and safety education, car seat installs. I believe still today that we're the only car seat technician in the county. So we install a lot of car seats at our station. So, and we just do that as a community service. And then equipment maintenance, that takes up a lot of our time. So the next 2 pages are a 5-year comparison. I think last year we just had a comparison in the annual report for total calls. We broke that down this year as a total comparison. So the top graph, if you look at it, that's total calls that we ran in from 2014 to 2018, and then the city calls. So the third graph, if you look at the third graph, that would be the town of Sturgeon Bay, or I'm sorry, town of Sevastopol calls. So you'll see we were up a few calls from last year, 13 calls in 2018 versus 2017. So, but staying pretty consistent with call numbers in the town of Sevastopol. And then just an overview of some of the things that we do: fire suppression, medical response in the city and in the townships when needed. And RTF, when we say RTF, that's Rescue Task Force. So we, with all the active shooters and the hostile events, the city of Sturgeon Bay has been designated as the RTF team. So if there's ever a hostile event, active event in the county, the city of Sturgeon Bay Fire Department would be called to that. So we carry ballistic gear on our trucks and would respond in a warm zone to help evacuate patients and critically injured. A lot of public educations. We're in the schools quite a few times out of the years, industries, businesses doing fire prevention. Of course, inspections. We do fire inspections in all businesses, and fire investigation and special rescues. So that next page shows a couple little pictures of some of the specialized rescue that we do, rappelling and trench rescue and ropes and rigging. So, City of Sturgeon Bay has a joint honor guard with the city police department, so it's made up of members of both police and firefighters. It's quite active in the community and throughout the state on our honor guard. I believe last year when the chief was here, he was talking about the training site that we are in the process of building. That's pretty much up and running. We would like to add a couple additions to it, but it's if anybody has driven out by the dog park in Sturgeon Bay on Division Road, and you see the stacked Connex boxes out there, we made a splash pad. It gives us a place where we can do live fire training. So in the past, to do any live fire training, we would have to take our department down to Green Bay because that's the closest burn tower. Well, we can't take our whole department out of the city. So this allows us to do live fire training, confined space training. We have a little tiny tugboat out there. We can do some shipboard stuff. Last summer we built this, the middle picture, called a splash pad. It allows us to do ladder operations, roof operations. So a lot of training that we weren't able to do in the past that this has allowed us to do now. So we're our guys have worked very, very hard on that. So ice and water rescue, being surrounded by water, we all know that we get a lot of those calls. So we have two boats. We have a 27-foot safe boat that we share with our city police department that we can do water rescues, and then we have a small rubber raft that works well at Cave Point because we can actually carry it right down the rocks. So the next page actually talks a little bit more about our rescue task force. So how we work really close with law enforcement, city police department, and Door County Sheriff's Department, as well as Door County Emergency Services on that rescue task force team. And then we get into fire prevention. So education, again, we go into the schools, senior centers, we do hands-on fire extinguisher training for businesses, home safety visits, a lot of community events that we're out at trying to just make everybody safer and living a safer life. Community outreach, that's where we get more into our car seat installations, again, the health fairs, the kids, safe kids days, those type of things. So. And then we just added a couple more little pictures of things. So, if anybody has any questions for me, but yeah.
Are you still looking for 3 part-time?
We are short part-time. We actually just held a we tested, let me think, my days here screwed up. Last week we did the written test, and last night we held the physical agility. So waiting for all the test results to come back from that, and I believe there's a meeting next week for interviews. So we're very hopeful that we'll be bringing some more on. So
You've had those openings for quite a while, have you not?
we have, yeah. We've kind of had some problems recruiting and retention, so. But
Okay.
from what we understand, it's throughout the whole county is having some issues with recruitment and retention, so.
Agreed.
So when you're at full complement, that's 19 reserve firefighters?
We would have 15 paid on call.
Yes.
And then 14 career with the chief and myself.
Okay.
So 12 career firefighters, the chief and myself, and then 15 paid on call.
Thank you.
Great. Any question?
Yeah.
So, can you just run those numbers past me again? How many you have on staff?
We would be 15 paid on call
Yep.
and 14 career.
Okay.
So the 14 career includes the chief and myself. So there's 12 full-time firefighters, the chief and myself, and then 15 paid on call.
Okay. Last year, Chief extended his hand to Tip Town and Assawappi. Trying to kind of a little escapade. Seeing that we got a new school going up here, the population is probably going to grow. And the town board took it amongst themselves years back to have a company come in and tell us that we needed 2 fire stations in the town of Sevastopol with 45 people. Where is the dedication going to lay? If you guys spread yourself thin to the town of Assawappi, are we going to come second, third on the list? Where is our town and our kids going to come?
If anything would change as far as who we cover and what we cover, right now we have a contract that's, right now where we lie is with City of Sturgeon Bay, Town of Sturgeon Bay, and Town of Sevastopol. Right now there's nothing going on with Town of Assawappi. If that would happen, there would probably be some changes within our department. I can't answer what those changes would be because nothing has ever come of any of it, so.
Well, I just stated that it's hard to retain people and get people to come into it. And we need 45 people just in this township.
And I know that there was a study done. I'm not familiar with what all I don't recall what all those were, so I can't even speak to that right now.
I think it's a suggestion of the town that they might want to think into calling this company again and getting those numbers revisited. Because I think the town is pushing aside the safety of the children at this new school.
Now, if there was a shortage of firefighters, they would activate a Mavis card and that would pull any firefighters from a different area. So,
but in lies the problem, John. Okay. We discussed this thousands of times.
Yeah.
The call for mutual aid and the animosity between the fire departments up here is atrocious. So, back to my question. If you guys spread yourself thin to the town of Assawappi, if it happens, where does the town of Sevastopol lie?
And again, I can't talk to you about anything with the town of Assawappi because at this point right now, there's nothing going on with the town of Assawappi. And if that would ever happen, there would probably be a lot more talks that would happen. So, I mean, I don't think it's anything that we could even talk about right now.
I mean, it's logical that if their area of coverage were to expand, just as if your business grew, you would have to change the number of people and the number of pieces of equipment that you would need to service that area, so.
So in other words, the town should actually look into, instead of the city of Sturgeon Bay having all the equity for what we pay for, and your definition is going to be we pay for fire service, I understand that. Maybe the town should actually look into investing some equity into the town and not the city of Sturgeon Bay. It's just a thought. Maybe the numbers that your company or whoever came in and did their analysis should come back and rethink about.
And in fact, I just happened to re-look at those numbers. I actually have them with me. But going off the top of my head, we paid for an independent outside consultant made up of fire chiefs. They came in and looked at our town. They did an extensive study. They came back with a recommendation that we would need 2 fire stations of our own in order to really cover at the same level of coverage that we have today, and that we needed all of these people. And the key piece in that component, aside from the fact that it would double our cost, is we needed volunteers and paid on-call people. Today, the same thing is happening throughout the county that's happened with the fire department, trying to recruit people. There's not the same base of people that were out there decades ago that are willing to step off the tractor, jump in the car, and go to a volunteer fire department. So having people to staff it, it becomes very difficult. And the costs associated with it and the coverage and the implementation was such that it wasn't practical for us to do so. And I don't expect that, and I can look up the date here, but I think it was 2011. I don't expect that the costs have decreased since that time frame. I think it was fairly expensive. So we chose that alternative. They've given us good value and good service for our dollar. And I don't see us really going back through to investigate something that we already know is going to even be more expensive than what they gave us before. And the availability of volunteers and people in general has not increased in the county. If anything, it's decreased. So I don't think at this point we're anticipating anything. In fact, in our town board meeting, we're going to be talking about an extension of the fire contract with the city. So, any other questions of Caitlin? Yes.
Seeing that this was brought up in a town meeting a couple months back, the fire department is now issuing the burn permits for the town of Sevastopol, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm gonna ask this question one more time. You guys go out and inspect the pile on the property. You guys do your inspection, they burn. You get called back to that property to extinguish the fire because it gets out of control. It gets billed back to the town. Why is that?
Doesn't get.
Contrary.
We do not get.
Easy how you answer.
I don't have to answer easily. The answer is we don't get billed back.
Point of order. I have the floor now.
Excuse me, sir.
Excuse me.
You asked
Point
me
of
a
order,
question,
Mr. Chairman.
and I'm going to answer the
Point
question.
of order does not give you the floor. Point of order is the chairman runs the meeting.
And I'm glad you're here because I got quite a few questions for you, Mr. Nesbitt.
And
I love the smile because it's great. I love it. It's beautiful.
John?
Anyways, back to my question. A couple months ago, I asked this question. And Tony Hayne, at the end of the meeting, wanted to address it. And you didn't give him a minute to do it. So I'm doing it again. You guys hand out the permits. You guys go out and inspect the pile. That fire gets out of control. You get called back to that property. Why is it not billed when you get called back to that property to the homeowner or their insurance? Why should the town have to pay for it? Why should it have to come out of our slush fund?
And I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, we do not bill for anything. If you could give me I don't know what you're
I just spelled it
I don't know what.
We do not get billed for any additional service.
No, we have a contract.
We have a contract. And we don't put into that contract 3 burn calls coming on the second pass. I mean, it's a flat rate. It covers issuing of permits, education. It covers accidents, it covers all the things that Caitlin delineated.
Right, and in that contract, I'm quite certain at the bottom line, it says anything above and beyond.
Anything, this would be very similar to the issue of someone has an accident with a car and you want to say, okay, bill the insurance company back for the stop sign you knocked down. The reality of it is it doesn't happen and nobody pays. But we don't bill back, they don't bill back, and we don't get billed back. It's a flat rate for all services. So, that's it. There's nothing more to it.
So basically what, so their fee, what we pay them per year, that's it?
That's it.
Nothing. So we get nothing extra, so if they gotta come out 20 times, you get charged nothing extra?
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
So, Linda?
Well, but your department, if there was an ordinance violation,
Well, they'll get
a county ordinance violation, you could have our county court counsel issue a citation for violation, correct?
To my knowledge, the only citations we have is for illegal, like if they're burning something illegal, that would be under the county sheriff's department, we would call those, but.
So that might cure.
But we don't,
Mr. Didier.
we do not charge for any calls, services, incidents.
Right.
Well, that's just kind of a covered question you just asked. Because if they inspected the pile and it gets out of control, whose responsibility is that actually, Linda? The fire departments. And if you read their oath, and John knows it, he can repeat it. Fire department is here to prevent fires, not sign permits to burn. by all means, please read it. By all means.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just one quick
Sure.
informational thing. So from what I've witnessed in the past, I mean, it seems like all the fire departments in the county actually work together pretty well. I mean, especially with what just happened not too long ago. So I guess my question is, I mean, you know, I'm on North Country View Road, you know, Egg Harbor, town fire departments right down the road there. I mean, would they, I mean, even though Sturgeon Bay is, you know, 10 minutes away, like if something like major happens, would they be called first or would Sturgeon Bay? How would that be?
Caitlin, want to explain mutually.
So we have an auto aid agreement with Egg Harbor and Jacksonport up in this area. So anytime that there's a structure fire, meaning smoke and fire, they would be paged at the same time we would.
Okay.
So they would our county dispatch is able to send out multiple tones.
Okay.
Or to multiple pagers. Your home department, which would be Sturgeon Bay Fire, is always going to be paged, but we're also going to call those departments.
Okay, so you don't have to wait for Sturgeon Bay to come first and figure out that, hey,
Nope.
we need more help and, okay,
Nope.
just curious.
No, we'd rather them coming and then we can always turn them around if we don't need them.
Okay.
And that gives us the best coverage, given the geographic area that we have.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I figured. I mean, it's like, you know, you got the Egg Harbor Town Hall just down the road, and I, you know, just wondering like what their response or, you know, and so on and so forth. So,
Yeah, and we have a great working relationship with fire department, so.
right, and that's what it seems like, you know, from what I've witnessed in the past. So, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out where, you know, animosity and all this thing, like I said, from what I've witnessed, it seems like all the fire departments in the county and other counties bordering us seem to be working pretty well together.
We do, yep.
Okay, nothing else? Thank you, Caitlin, appreciate it. Okay. Kyle, you're gonna have to step up your game. We're running a little late on time.
I'll pick it up.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kyle Lidke, the superintendent of Sevastopol Schools. I just wanted to highlight three things. Well, one's not a highlight, so I'll start with that one. The snow days we had this year, 7 snow days, 2 late starts, and then we had a broken pipe in the 1965 part of the building. Department of Public Instruction requires us to have grades 7 through 12 have 1,137 hours of instruction. About 5-6 years ago, it was number of days per year. That's no longer the system, so at the April board meeting, our board will have to adjust our calendar for the 18-19 school year to adjust for that. The highlight of the year well, there's 2 big highlights. The one is our report card, which shows the strength of our staff and our students. That comes out every November from the state, from DPI. And for the district, we exceeded expectations, which is the highest level you can obtain. We received 4 scores, 1 for elementary, 1 for middle school, and 1 for high school, and then a district score. Our middle school was the #1 middle school for grades 6, 7, 8 in the state of Wisconsin for this year. So we're extremely proud of our middle school, as all of our students and staff, but specifically if the middle school be the #1 in the state, that's something, quite an accomplishment. The third thing, we did have the referendum pass in November. We had school perceptions do a survey of the community in June. We have 2 options, a brand new building and a $45 million addition renovation project. The community told us 38% would support those initiatives. So we did not go that route. We went with a question in November for $25.1 million. The survey showed us that 60% would support as some sort of building project, and 61.8% did support that question, so we thank the people for supporting that. Also, we had an operating cost referendum question for 2 years, non-recurring, for $2 million for each year, and the survey told us that 69% of the population would support that, and 69% of the population did support that, so school perceptions was pretty on with their numbers. Over the side here, I have some drawings of the plans. Every other Thursday, the architects, which is Bray Architects and Myron Construction's our general contractor, come out to the school. They either bring some engineers, whether they're civil, plumbing, electrical, and some of the other experts out, and they meet with the various staff members, and our teachers are getting to design what the future classrooms will look like. 4K through 6th grade will have new classrooms. The middle school will have the renovated part of the building, and we'll have a brand new science wing. Industrial arts will be all brand new. along with a fab lab and a middle school, high school art room, elementary library, and a new multi-purpose room. And we're thankful for the donations we received. We received 4 donations prior to the election, and we received an anonymous one in December for $300,000 as well. So the community support's been very great. The plans are there. Every 2 weeks they change a little bit, but the footprint won't change. So if you're interested, I'll leave those there. Look at them. I'll leave them there all night. I'll get another set on Thursday when the architects come out again, because they'll keep adjusting. And you should know that our staff over there has been very minimal in their asking of what they want, because 10% of our building is air conditioned and they don't have staff bathrooms, and so they're just appreciative for the opportunity to have something better for our kids, and they've been wonderful to work with. And if you ever have any questions about the building or something, give me a call, I'll give you a tour, I'll walk you through the latest plans, but it's just an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for your support. Any questions?
Any questions from anybody? Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks.
Thanks for shortening up. Appreciate it.
That's as fast as I could do it.
Did a good job. Okay, what we're going to do is spend a couple minutes and just kind of give you a little bit of highlights, year in review from the different supervisors who cover different committees. We'll talk a little bit about, so you have some idea what to expect, the cable TV PEG channel, Park and Recreation Board, a little bit on the Plan Commission, Property Management, and an update on the Door County Tourism Zone and coastal byways. And we'll start that off with Jim Nellum. So.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll go through this quickly. If you have any questions, you can obviously ask me. And if you want to talk after the meeting, I'd be more than happy to speak to you. The town operates, as most of you know, a TV station that broadcasts on channel 986. You can find it on Charter's cable TV service. Under Laddie Chapman's direction, who's our program director, the station, which is unlike other educational channels operated by most municipalities, endeavors to video record and curate several hours of broadcast content daily. That's highly unusual. In addition to live broadcasting town board meetings and other government meetings, the video recordings of those town board meetings are available on YouTube. I assume most of the people in this room know that and probably use YouTube. Laddie this year submitted 4 of his recordings to the Wisconsin Community Media and was awarded several prizes, testament to his abilities. The expense of operating the TV station is covered by a franchise fee paid to the town by Charter. It's based on its cable services revenues. The town board has been alerted to the fact that Charter, along with other cable companies throughout the country, are endeavoring to cut back, if not eliminate altogether, those cable franchise fees. They don't want to pay them. They've been paying them for 30 years, and they're because of I suppose they view their competitive situation, they just as soon be out from under that burden. The process, which has begun, there's a pending decision by the Federal Communications Commission. This process will begin with the Federal Communications Commission. I suspect there's going to be a lot of litigation, and where it ends, we don't know. But bear in mind the following. We estimate that only a quarter of the homes located in the town actually subscribe to Charter's cable service. People can buy either the cable service or they can buy their internet, the data services. We figure about a quarter of the households in the county subscribe to Charter's cable service. And only those residents who actually subscribe to the cable service can tune into channel 986. In addition, Laddie has been told by Charter that they have no interest in putting any more money into enhancing the channel, and they have indicated they're unwilling to broadcast in high definition, which is why if you happen to go onto the channel and get it, it looks fuzzy. It's something you probably saw in the in the 70s. Consequently, we have just begun to discuss among ourselves with Laddie and the PEG Commission. Given the availability of viewing these video recordings on YouTube and the fact that only a minority of the households in the town even have access to channel 986, the discussion is whether we should consider broadcasting these events on YouTube exclusively. I want to emphasize we are at the very beginning of that discussion. We've also begun to look at what it would cost us to live stream these events, such as what you're witnessing here tonight on YouTube. Again, we're at the beginning of this process. If you have a view one way or the other, I invite you to make your feelings known to us. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jim. Mark Hain, who volunteered to give us a little bit of a recap from Tony's perspective on the Parks and Recreation Board.
Do you want me to come up front, or?
Why don't you, if you don't mind, for a minute?
I got a little cold and allergies going on, so I apologize right away. I'll make this short and sweet. Mark Hain, I guess acting chairman for now, got thrown into it. The ball fields are almost playable. Mother Nature isn't helping us. The guys are over there. We have 4 employees currently, pretty much all part-timers. If anybody knows somebody that wants to work full-time, that'd be great. Right, Gary? We could use a full-timer. We're just trying to get it going. I mean, it's a struggle this year with the late snow and the high water level everywhere. Ball fields are looking good. The water will be going on this weekend at the concession stand. That's another struggle. Got to get the temperature up to keep the water going and yada yada. We all know about that. My notes here. The Clark Lake Dam. The water is way above where we would really like it, but it's within the guidelines. Right now we're not set to a certain standard. We just have to be above a certain point, and look around, it's definitely above a certain point. We have all the boards out that we can take out. We're doing what we can. We're gonna try to get it down before Memorial Day and then get it back up in the summertime and keep it like we do every year. The boat launch will be going in on Town Line Road on the north end, hopefully before May. That's another one, weather permitting. The Porta-Johns will be going in the parks and weather permitting as well. And the calendar is starting to fill up with schedule of the games. We have Babe Ruth, we're hoping for Legion again. We have our little Rudy Toots, if anybody knows what that is. It's the incoming 4K, 5K, and first graders. They're, this big to this big, and they're on Wednesday nights. If you guys want something cool, head over there on Wednesday nights in the summertime. We'll be starting up here, I believe it's like the 23rd-ish of May, the end of May here. If you want to see some fun, it's a lot of fun watching those little Rugrats run around out there. I think that's about it.
Beach will be open eventually.
Oh, well, the beach, yeah. Well, the beach is open. If you want to go down there in the bikini, it's open.
Beach is open, take that.
But just enter at your own risk. There is no ice right now, so it won't be too bad. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Mark, I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, on the Plan Commission, John?
The building projects are up, starting to pick up, so we'll have more meetings. We have one new house going on this month, 3 remodels and 2 decks. So on the comprehensive plan update, we had a setback that the federal government kind of caused and didn't award some money, so we are going to be about 4 months behind, and we're asking for an extension. So other than that, everything is going well. So, but the approximate remaining contract is over $10,000. So it's the government needs to award the money that we have gotten granted to us.
I know I saw the extension request.
Yes.
As long as you've got, I have it here further in the comprehensive plan update, and either you or Linda, why don't you just touch on, as long as we're talking about that, the timetable we're kind of hoping for.
Oh, I don't have that.
I have the memo right here. So we're working with Bay Lakes Regional Planning Commission to assist us in the update of our comprehensive plan. Our very comprehensive plan is about that thick, and it's up for a 10-year renewal as mandated by state statute. So we did contract with Bay Lakes Regional Planning Commission. We pay annual dues to them, and they helped us garner this substantial grant. through the coastal management plan, I believe. And we've had one public input session last fall, I believe.
Correct.
And there will be others, so please watch for announcements because there will be at least one additional public input session. And as Mr. Stavinus mentioned, we have an extension to October 31st of this year. So perhaps with our summer people here, we would have a session in July or August when we can get the majority of input from our residents.
Correct.
So that's where it sits right now.
And the survey has been closed now.
Right, there was a survey that went out with our first public informational. Yeah, that's closed now. That was closed, I think, as of December.
Yes, 'cause
We
of
haven't gotten
timeline.
the results from that survey yet either. So we're working with Brandon Robinson at Bay Lake Regional, and he'll be in touch with us, I'm sure.
I think you have a question, Linda. Kim?
The extension is for the completion of the comprehensive plan?
Correct, to complete the project. And it's going to be a very condensed, updated plan. So, available to everyone. So, your input is important, so please spread the word once we have those dates set.
Come to the public hearings.
Okay, given that you have the floor, how about continuing with property management?
Yes, Property Management Committee was instituted a few years ago, and with the institution of that committee came a couple ordinances to address unkempt properties, outside storage. I'm the fortunate person to be appointed chairman of that committee. Thank you. But we've accomplished a lot in the past year. Actually, at last year's annual meeting, one of our electors did present a memo, and she had some concerns as to how properties were placed on that list and the criteria and, you know, what is the process for making complaints, and that the committee should be more open. So after we looked at this rather extensive list, it has been downsized considerably. So with the cooperation of our residents and our owners and the Door County Zoning Administrator and their department, many of these properties have been removed. I think we're down to just one page. So one page that the town perhaps can address, and one other page with maybe 4 or 5 parcels on that Door County Zoning is addressing. So anything that we do, you know, notice our agenda. It's on our website. Amy posts it. Minutes are always available. Again, thank you to our residents for making an effort to respect your neighbor's view of your property. And we were waiting for a legal opinion from our attorney on several questions. We just received that the beginning of this month. So I do expect that we will have a Property Management Committee meeting in May.
Okay, you want 2 hats, you want to try for 3? You want to do coastal byways, and then we'll go to somebody
Sure.
else?
Sure. Speaking of 10-year updates, so in 2009, the Door County Coastal Byway came into being. This again was a program through the Wisconsin Scenic Byway Program. So there are 8 municipalities involved in the Door County Coastal Byway. I'll start from the south end. Town of Sevastopol, Town of Jacksonport is currently in it, Town of Bailey's Harbor, Town of Liberty Grove, Village of Sister Bay, Town of Gibraltar, Village of Egg Harbor, I believe that, and Village of Ephraim.
Oh, yeah.
So there again, it's time for a 10-year update. So we do have a Coastal Byway Council that is made up of representatives from each of those towns, so we meet quite regularly. We're meeting next week, actually. So we had solicited from all of these municipalities, please look at the current corridor management plan. Please let the Coastal Byway Council know what have you done since that 2009 implementation. For instance, the town of Sevastopol added a parking lot on Heberly Road. Okay, so the parking lot, you can park there, take your canoe or kayak or whatever, and get into Dunes Lake. It doesn't necessarily have to be on 4257. So there's many tourist attractions that, you know, are off of the highway. You know, and then to look also what we might have planned for the future. So something that came to my mind were our basketball/tennis courts or whatever. If you can incorporate your future goals into that plan, that would make you more eligible, or likely to be more eligible, for various grants that are out there. So the Coastal Byway, the town board will be acting on that resolution to re-up for another 10-year period. The costs have gone down substantially. We were paying, you could call them annual dues, I suppose, to the council just to support the website and different tasks that the council does. Last year, I believe, we were down to $100. So the costs are really minimal at this point, unless we would decide to do some major undertaking. So.
And if you haven't seen the kiosk that we have, it's on the corner of Highway 57, on the corner of Forest, where Grandma Tommy's is. It was an investment. Each one of the cities, towns, villages that are involved in this have similar kiosks. I think ours is probably the nicest one of all of them, because it's the focal point as you enter the major portion of northern Door County. But stop and take a look. There's some interesting information on the 4 boards that are up there, and you could sit there and have a beer on a nice sunny day and read all this good stuff, okay?
On our beautiful benches.
On our beautiful benches, which we're responsible for. So let's go to the last person here, which is Jim. Wants to talk a little bit about the County Tourism Zone Commission, which he's our representative on.
The Tourism Zone Commission is otherwise known as the Room Tax Commission. All municipalities in Door County, city, the villages and the towns that have a room tax ordinance, collect room taxes, have delegated the responsibility for collecting those taxes to the Room Tax Commission, the Door County Tourism Zone Commission. Incidentally, the room tax earned by the town is our 3rd largest revenue stream after real estate taxes and state aids from the state of Wisconsin. So it constitutes a significant amount of money, approximately 15% of the levy. The room taxes were up modestly. This year, $100,000 were received. In calendar year 2018, up from $97,000 the year before. But the growth that we saw several years ago has really plateaued. The total nights available last year were down 4% from the prior year, although the occupancy rate increased 2%, and the average nightly rate charged also increased 2%. So year on year, we saw a small increase in the actual room taxes received. There is an issue, and Chuck Tice has mentioned this because he was my predecessor on the Room Tax Commission board. It's an issue that still plagues us, and that is the extent to which, if the onus for collecting room tax shifts to, for instance, Airbnbs, as an example. An Airbnb is one of about 19 or 20 electronic marketplaces that make a market in short-term rentals. The view is, our very great concern is we're going to lose the ability to audit the receipt of those taxes. And it's the considered opinion of members of the Room Tax Commission that Door County probably has a compliance rate in excess of 99%, which I think is almost unheralded in the state of Wisconsin. And I think it's because of the capable administration by Ken Roberts and under the guidance of Josh Van Lieshout. They take their responsibilities very, very seriously. And if I could bore you to death, which I'm not about to do, about all of the efforts that go into identifying short-term rentals in the county. I would make one comment just to underscore the significance of organizations like Airbnb. Airbnb has 6 million units listed. It has more units available for short-term rental than the top 6 hotel chains have. It's enormous. It has a reach and a scale that is almost unprecedented. And it's reflected in the fact that if Airbnb goes public, the expectation is it will have an enterprise value well in excess of Hilton Hotels or Marriott Corporation because of the number of short-term rentals they have available every night. One other comment. The number of permitted units in the town has decreased modestly. But I think that doesn't take into effect the fact that the growth we've seen in units available over the last several years has been almost entirely in Airbnb, VRBO, and other electronic exchanges. So when you talk about units, it can be a little deceiving because if you're talking about a traditional resort that's got 20 units, you can pretty much understand if you've got 20 units, 2 people can stay in each unit. You can do the math and you say, okay, they probably have available the ability to house 40 people. As you probably know, when a homeowner puts their home on Airbnb, they may have 4, 6, 8, 12, 15, 18, in some cases 20 beds available. So while the number of units has gone down or has stagnated, the number of available nights rentals it has significantly grown. And we are beginning to sense, we are beginning to get some reaction to this development on the Room Commission. People are becoming aware that more and more homes are being put into the rental pool. They're aware of the fact that people are buying homes with the express purpose of putting them to Airbnb. There are some concerns about the ability of the state of Wisconsin to stay up to date in terms of inspecting those premises to make sure that they're adhering to health and safety codes, that their septic systems are adequate to the job, and that they're testing their water periodically. So there are a number of issues that go well beyond the Room Tax Commission that will have to be dealt with over time. That's it.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions of Jim? Linda?
I'd just like to,
Sorry.
there are at least 50 reporting Airbnbs, flip keys, VRBOs right now, just in Sevastopol. And this would be a good topic when we have our public input sessions on our comprehensive plan. I think it would be in the best interest that they be put on the same playing level that hotels, motels, condos. Why shouldn't they abide by the same standards that any hotel or motel should be abiding by? And as Mr. Nellen mentioned, that includes fire inspections, well testing, whatever. So like I said, I think it would be a great topic for our comprehensive plan update sessions. Other municipalities are doing it. You can license, you can enact an ordinance to regulate licensing and permitting of those. And it would also help if they're going to remit by zip code 54235. Well, we all know that within 54235, we have the city of Sturgeon Bay, the town of Sevastopol, the town of Jacksonport, town of Sturgeon Bay, and Summervig Harbor. If Airbnbs or flip keys or whatever are remitting one lump check to 54235, how are we going to divvy that up? So.
Well, you can't. That's the problem.
Right.
Because we are under an obligation, a legal obligation, to see that the monies collected go to the municipalities from which the money was drawn. And we can't simply take an educated guess. We have to be right down to the dollar, down to the cent. I would say in connection with what Supervisor Waite said, as a for instance, and you could go on ad nauseum. But as a for instance, we know that the fire department works closely with resorts and condo hotels and condominiums in this community. They want to know, if there's a fire, they want to know what units are occupied. They want to understand how they're going to get all those people out in a timely fashion. But if a person's renting a private home and he's got 20 people, and there have been anecdotal comments of people who have said that they're on their street, they woke up one morning and there was a school bus in front of a house down the street that was renting out on Airbnb, or they found 15 cars parked. There's a concern that there's a fire. How do you get all those people out? How do you even know they're there? Who can you contact to find out who's in the place? And I know that this county spent half a century trying to get control of septic systems, and if you have a house that's built, that has a septic system that's designed for 6 people, and you've got 18 people staying and it's a septic system, there's only it's a question of how long it will take for that septic system to fail. And I have to say, the county is onto this. I mean, they're very well aware, and they're struggling to figure out exactly what they can do to regulate this.
Because it came down from the state, it was actually thrown into the budget as an amendment. And so all counties' hands are sort of tied when it comes to regulating these. But individual municipalities, there's certain criteria that you can request Airbnbs or whatever to comply with. As I said, licensing or permitting processes.
I think the reason you have heard a lot about that topic tonight is because of that picture over there.
John's good.
I'm sorry, I'll pick it up. I mean, the town hall, for the most part, was paid to a very large degree by room tax. So we were one of the first supporters of it, anticipated getting, at the time it was started, $12,000 a year. So yeah, it grew dramatically here. I'm sorry, someone had a question. Yes?
Linda, I don't know if you'll have the answer to it. I know either city or the town of Sturgeon Bay has now been implementing a parking tax on mobile homes, and it just took effect here just recently. Now, with what you guys are talking about, will that affect campgrounds, mobile home parks, or any of that? Because it's an overnight stay. It's just a question. I know I don't think we got a campground here in town, but
I'm not aware of any paying campgrounds. You can camp on your own property for a certain number of days. And when it comes to a mobile home is actually subject to personal property, so we would never charge an owner extra for a mobile home.
That question was brought up to me about 2 weeks ago. The city of Sturgeon Bay, there's a mobile home court that they're now charging a parking fee for. So I was just wondering if that would affect that what do you call, that fund? That room tax?
Well, I think the main concern is if you have an Airbnb and, like Mr. Nellen said, sleeps 18 and you have 10 cars parked in a driveway that should only accommodate 3 cars, and they're parking on the street and, causing the safety hazards, I think that's what we were talking about when it comes to parking.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, we're going to move on.
I'm just trying to, so basically, as of right now, they're there's just no regulations for them, I mean, besides the room tax, I mean, they don't get checked for the wells and all that stuff, they just don't get inspected before they, I guess I'm just trying to figure that out.
Rooming houses, and there's another term for Airbnbs, short-term rentals, do have to meet certain safety and public health requirements. But the growth has been so great that it has outstripped the ability of the state to timely inspect and enforce. And the state recognizes it. And last year, I believe they sent up a task force code inspectors from around the state up to Door County to see if they could get ahead of the curve. But the expansion, the number of people who are putting their homes into Airbnb is significant, and there's that problem.
Okay. All right, hearing nothing else here, one last topic that we were asked to put on our agenda, and I'll talk to that for a couple minutes, and then we'll go to elector concerns. And we had a request in a number of people that have called the town asking about the ability to put and drive their ATV on town roads. So I'll just give you the view from high and then open it up to the floor. Basically, the town does have, as a result of a couple of years of changes in the legislature, the ability to open up town roads that are 35 miles per hour or below. There are requirements that all of the town be marked with signage. There is a cost associated with buying, placing, and maintaining that signage. As most of you may know, Southern Door has been pretty active in opening its roads to ATVs. I've talked to some of my peers in Southern Door. They feel they've had good experience with it, but they find that the majority of the access with ATVs has been winter-driven, getting on the Bay of Green Bay to go ice fishing. So the majority of their traffic is all they feel is highly regulated towards that, although it is available year-round. Some of the towns do have seasonal use restrictions in place, and they also have road restrictions, areas that are perhaps too high a traffic, too high a speed, or some particular concerns. So we do have the ability to do that. We're not making a decision here tonight whether to open the town roads or not. That would be something we would do at a town meeting. We'd decide the process and how to involve the people within the town on that decision. But that's just a quick perspective, my perspective on it. And I know there's a gentleman here, John, that wants to talk about that, and anyone else. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that. So,
is here okay?
Yeah, if we can hear you, I guess.
Okay. I'm a Sevastopol resident, but also property in the town of Big Harbor. I was at their meeting last month, taking a lot of the information from Wisconsin Towns Association that Supervisor Wade provided to you. I think everybody's seen that. With Southern Door and with now the Bailey's Harbor going through it, there's certainly a local precedent. I mean, it's a process, but we have local resources, we have state resources. So I've had conversations with our highway commissioner, John Kaloji. He's got no issues. You mentioned the 35 miles an hour. We don't even need to, you know, if there's a route to be made, he'd welcome to help draw the map or make suggestions or do any of that kind of thing. Supervisor Wade talked to the current sheriff. She really doesn't have any concerns. I talked to Chief Deputy McCarty. You know, he admitted initially, he was like, I don't know about this, but the Southern Door experience, I think, has proved that it's very workable. His comment was it actually cut down on trespassing calls, because if we're paying attention, again, primarily in the winter, people are driving these machines anyway. The guides are running down from the quarry to Birmingham's to get bait. They're, you know, I know guys are going a mile across to get on the ice, and in the off season, I think people are looking the other way. But this gives us the opportunity to put some real thought into, you know, legalizing a route per se, and we've seen success with it. I don't know if you guys have seen the county website, but they're really promoting that 60 miles of trails in Southern Door. And honestly, that my daughter and I, that's something we do. We load up here and we go across the bridge and we dump down there and we spend our day and we go out for a fish fry at the end of the day. It'd be kind of nice to just run down to Birmingham's for a fish fry. That's kind of the catalyst. I've been bending Supervisor Stotton's ears on this for years. He just said, somebody's got to bring it to us. Here I am. So I'd be happy to be involved. Highway Commissioner would be happy to be involved if there's some sort of committee. And I think we could work in tandem with the town of Big Harbor, so, you know, perhaps roads could mesh up.
I guess I have no problem with having the conversation. I'd make it part of a future agenda. My guess is that we would probably have a public hearing to let the people have their input with respect to that issue. I think there are, I have a couple concerns that I'll be happy to express whenever regarding a couple areas where I think it might not be suited, but we have the ability to restrict routes. The biggest thing's gonna be out-of-pocket expense to get those things up and initially running. So out of curiosity, we should give me just a show of hands of people who think in general they would be supportive of expanding ATVs in the town. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10, 12 people. Okay. Anybody have any quick comments that you'd be willing to share? I'm sorry.
We did discuss this topic at our last Door County unit of Wisconsin Towns Association. And yes, Sheriff Sternard was there and reported that they have not had any problems. I spoke with someone from the town of Gardner. The town of Gardner has designated all of their town roads, but they also have an ATV organization or group that sponsored and paid for all of their signage. So that would be something to consider. And again, this is a great topic for our comprehensive plan update too.
I kind of started the conversation with some of the snowmobile clubs, it's half a dozen snowmobiles now on ATVs, because we haven't been able to ride for the last, so this year, right? And I think, you know, we don't have an ATV club per se up here, we have a number of snowmobile clubs. I think would be an easy network to tap of interest and maybe, help in that regard, whether it's funds or they're in talking to them, these clubs put up their signage and take it down every fall and spring, right? Here you put up the signs once, it's like your stop sign.
Right.
It just stays there unless somebody runs it over and then you replace it. So it's kind of a one and done scenario.
Right. Well, I have no problem putting it on a future agenda where the town can decide on how they'd like to progress and, what they would do. Comment?
This was mentioned with the cost. Would it be
I'm sorry.
appropriate to assess a usage fee?
Yeah.
I mean, you could have an annual usage fee to help with the cost of your signs and.
Would you like to catch those people and get that usage fee out of their pocket?
Snowmobile clubs do it, they do it for the trails and everything else, so it might be out of the question.
Believe me, I don't have an issue one way or the other. I'm open to ideas, because I don't anticipate the town's going to spend $2,000 or $3,000 for signage. So I think it'll have to be through some organization, group, or process. So, yes.
I mean, it doesn't have to be signage. I mean,
I'm sorry.
Does it have to be signage?
Required that it has to be.
Could you where some of the roads have the old bike lane and stuff like that, and something you just say have some kind of somewhere out along the road just have a little.
It has to be all signed.
Okay.
Intersections, everything. It does involve a little work initially.
Okay. I mean, all in all, though, kind of safety-wise, I think it probably would be safer just because, one, people riding in the ditches. I mean, one, you have people complaining about people trespassing. And second, I mean, just from kind of not necessarily experience, but when I was in high school, we had an individual that was, well, in this case it was a motorcycle, but still he was going in a ditch, hit a culvert, and passed away. So I mean, it's just, it would be safer, especially on a lot of our roads are not as high traffic. So on those roads, yeah, I think that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Okay. Any other? Excuse me, Sue.
I'm not real familiar with how this whole thing operates. These vehicles, would they be on the actual roadway? Would they,
Yes.
Because I was going to say, down on Bark and South Cape Point Drive, where we have all the little signs about the street is our sidewalk, all I can see is mayhem, with the amount of pedestrians we have down there.
Well, that's why I said I just wanted an indication. It's not something we're going to decide. We'll put together a process so people have a chance to give their input. I mean, there are things you can do even if you said it fit. You don't necessarily have to have every road covered. So that's really it. Last question here, John.
I know up north, northern part of the state, they designate ATV trails and UTV trails, and vice versa. In the verbiage, can it be attached with UTVs also? I mean, it's just because up there they designate a certain road for certain vehicles at a certain time of the year, and I don't understand exactly how it is, but if you look at their maps are stated you can use an ATV and you can use a UTV, which the difference is physical size on the machines and horsepower. there's just a lot of things that, like I said, I think it's a plus, if, for any count, it's a plus, because not only are you gonna bring more revenue into the town, you're gonna tie the towns together, which is a great thing, Now, if everybody can sit down and figure out how to get them across the bridge in summer, that'd be a plus, but I think it's a great thing, and I think it's time that we step forward and make things happen.
Can I comment on that just real quick?
Sure.
Up north, they have a lot of ATV and UTV trails through the woods and stuff. What we're talking about here, where other municipalities have their routes, which is on the road, because, everything's so chunked up to get landowners to, allow you to go through the.
Which up north, they actually run down the side of the highways. Yeah,
It's a little different.
There's a little bit of the difference. I understand the property up there is different than what we have here. I understand there's more population here.
Okay, with that, we'll keep you informed. There's plenty of ways we'll address this over time. Next item here, well, we're running quite lengthy, so I apologize for that, but electors' concerns from the floors, anything that someone would like to address that hasn't been covered, discussed, whatever? Yes.
I know it was brought up last year at this meeting, about conflict of interest with our town's attorney and the City of Sturgeon Bay Fire Department, which I know that conflict was taken care of by Mr. Nisbet, either resigning, getting fired, whatever the definition was, I don't honestly care. And here we are, and I'm going to address it again for another conflict of interest. Back in December, at a town meeting, Bluff Court Trail bulb. It was for the reduction of the size of that bulb in Bluff Court.
Right.
Where Mr. Nisbet sat on this side of the table, represented Mr., give me a second here, Rich Hendrickson, correct? Where you also represented him, but also gave the town board suggestions. Can you please give me your definition of a conflict of interest, Mr. Nisbet? I love this.
I explained that at the time that occurred, and that was not a conflict of interest. And anybody who thinks otherwise, that there's a state bar that's happy to investigate.
I think that is the next vote, but anyways, under that motion, I would like to make a motion on the floor one more time this year, because it won 14-4 last year, but I'm going to reword the motion this year. I would ask the townspeople and the town board that you be fired immediately for a conflict of interest due to you working with the City of Sturgeon Bay Fire Department prior to, and you also represent the town of Sevastopol, which you will be conducting the contract for the City of Sturgeon Bay. And I would ask the town people, as of right now, to take a hand vote to immediately fire you and remove you from your seat for a conflict of interest. And you proved it in December, representing two parties. In that bar associations thing, I think that is by far the best direction to go with this. That's two conflicts of interest in less than a year.
You are aware, and I think you mentioned it, I don't represent the City of Sturgeon Bay.
Correct, but you prior did represent the city and the fire department of Sturgeon Bay, which makes it a conflict when you're signing a contract. To the prior knowledge, yes it does. I understand. My motion is on the floor.
Your own rules.
My motion is on the floor. It's a huge conflict of interest. And when it comes down to it, I don't think your best interest is for the townspeople, nor is it for the town, period. My motion on the floor is to immediately fire you and have you replaced with somebody that is more responsible.
You're welcome to add a comment. If there's the first thing he needs, go ahead, make your comment.
I need a second.
I know, that's what I was going to say. Right, that's what I was going to get to.
And then if there's a second?
Yes. You have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay. There's a motion by John, second by his wife.
Which is no relevance.
That has no relevance, Dan.
Pardon me?
That has no relevance. It's Tim Daniil, not by his wife.
I'm sorry, my apologies, by Miss Daniil.
Well, I would think your town's attorney would correct you on that, but evidently he's
All those in
Smiling.
favor? I'll tell you what,
Let's see.
we can have discussion on it before we do anything. Jim, you want to say something? Go ahead.
I do, I mean, I'm very much aware of, you know, what constitutes conflict of interest. And I would ask you, people to consider the fact that the town has retained the Randy's law firm for a long period of time, and he's familiar with the affairs of the town. He doesn't have to be educated in these matters. He comes in with a great deal of knowledge. Most, and I'm running roughshod over it, I understand, but generally, most conflicts of interest can be repaired simply by acknowledging clearly to the client that there's a potential of a conflict, whether there is or not. My impression has been, at least in the short time I've been involved in this, is that counsel for the town has been very forthcoming in indicating where he thinks, if he thinks that he's subject to a prior engagement that may affect his professional responsibility. But, you know, I just say that there can be a real loss to the town if you somehow you find that an attorney is disqualified who's got all of that enormous knowledge about the town and how the town has approached issues previously. But I would ask, I mean, is it even appropriate to raise this kind of motion in the...
I'd have to ask the attorney. It seems like a pretty bizarre way to me.
It's beyond the jurisdiction of the town meeting.
I mean, first off, any motion that comes is strictly advisory regardless. So you have to know that as the starting point, in which case, under advice of counsel, I love that phrase.
So then I tell you what, I'll just make it simple. I'll retract that motion. But I also want the townspeople to also know that I do believe you wrote the raise order for that feed mill, did you not?
What?
Did you write the raise order for the feed mill? Inserted by Granary?
I don't recall.
Oh, imagine
Our
that.
firm was involved in it.
Yeah, exactly, the Pinkert Law Firm. Anyways, my motion is recalled. I'm not gonna bother because you guys will just snake around it again.
We appreciate the withdrawal. Thank you. Any other collectors' concerns? Yes, Sue.
I have a question. Now that the town has paid off this building, what are you guys thinking about? What's going to be? What are your plans, or how are you going to attack the plans for that money going forward?
That is a very easy answer. We've already stuck most of that money into roads for 2019. We have.
Was that voted on here?
No.
Budget meeting.
No, that was part of our budget, anticipating where it's going. We have an issue in that we have 87 miles of roads. Right now, we are repaving them every 40 years. So we have not been able to put more than a couple $100,000 aside a year to take care of the roads. And knowing that our building was going to be paid, we pushed most of that money towards roads and may end up going in a few other places, but we're going to try and step up our road construction budget so that we can play catch up. Many of the roads within the town, and this will be a topic of discussion during our meeting, hopefully yet tonight, are in dire need of repair, and there just isn't any other way to go at those things. We could levy, I mean, we could go borrow money to do roads, but we're trying to use the monies that we have accumulated to try and tackle that. So that's our high-end approach. Haven't gone much farther than that. So, okay, yes.
Seeing that we brought up the budget, I want to answer your question that I was asked kind of around the loop and why I voted no on your budget. It's an interesting no. You guys shuffled $10,000 off the Whitefish dock that is in drastic need of repairs and fixing. Did any of that money get put back into that dock? Into that dock fund?
No, and guess what? The money did not come from the repair of the Whitefish Bay dock. If I'm not mistaken, maybe your memory's better than mine, it was the pump out fund, right?
I believe it was placed there
when
the break wall was installed,
Thank you,
and we had
yes.
that extensive study with our consultant. Robert E. Lee, I believe, and Associates.
Yeah, it was a
And that
DNR.
was a DNR order that if something went wrong with the break wall or maintenance of the break wall, that we had to have $10,000 available to help with that cost,
That's what it
if
was.
necessary.
And I consulted with the DNR, and they no longer had that requirement, so that money went back into the general fund. We have monies available to do some work on the Whitefish Bay dock. I'm currently getting estimates for that now, so. Chuck, have you got a question?
I think a rule of order, the motion cannot be withdrawn without the approval of the second.
Withdraw the second.
I'm sorry.
Withdraw the second.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Chuck. All right, any other electors' concerns? Any resolutions from the floor? Yes.
I regret that I even have to bring this up, but the morning after the election, I did have a telephone conversation with Supervisor Tony Haynes. And among other things, he asked me to promise him that I would not give up on trying to better serve our town. And he asked if I'd be willing to meet with him once he got home from the hospital. As we all know, unfortunately, that did not happen, so I'm here tonight to fulfill my promise to Tony. The resolution that I have to present to the board addresses the unfortunate event of an unexpected supervisor vacancy. The simple reason for this resolution is to save the time and money for the town and to acknowledge those individuals that had enough concern for the town to invest their own time and money by filing campaign papers and attempting to guide our town into a better future and to deter a hand-picked board. Resolution number 07-2004 TD was written by Town Chairman Dan Wolfel and reads in part, if a vacancy for the position of supervisor were to occur within 4 months following an election for said office, the candidate to have received the next highest number of votes shall be appointed supervisor. Due to this resolution, Supervisor John Stevens was able to regain his seat following a failed election. 14 years later, a second resolution was written, also by Town Chairman Dan Wolfel in January 2018, after campaign papers were filed by a resident other than an incumbent. That resolution omitted any of the election consideration and simply states in part, if a vacancy occurs, the position should be advertised with the intent of soliciting individuals wishing to be considered for the appointment to the office of supervisor. I find it senseless and a waste of the town's money to go through such a process if there are other candidates that have invested in our community for a vacant position. The resolution that I have prepared reads as follows. To the Sevastopol Town Board of Supervisors, whereas whenever it is deemed necessary to update the policy and procedures which establish the guidelines for the operation of the Town Board of Supervisors, such a recommendation should be made by resolution and approved by a majority of the board. Whereas by recent action of the Board of Supervisors, it was determined to amend the current policy and procedures by changing of the following. Unexpected supervisor vacancy. If a vacancy for the position of supervisor were to occur within 4 months following an election for said office, the candidate to have received the next highest number of votes shall be appointed supervisor. If the vacancy occurs after the 4-month period, the position should be advertised with the intent of soliciting individuals wishing to be considered for appointment to the office of supervisor. All potential candidates would be interviewed by those eligible to participate in such selection process, with selection and appointment on a majority vote of the total members participating. Now therefore be resolved that the aforementioned become the policy and procedure of the town board and be followed by filling such vacant supervisory position.
Okay. Before we go any farther with that, I would like, it was going to be on the agenda anyhow, to have Randy address the state statute with respect to backfilling an open vacant supervisor's position. And Randy?
The statute gives the town board the exclusive right to fill the position of town supervisor.
Point of order.
Or not to
The resolution is brought to you, it needs to be seconded. It doesn't matter what the state says, the resolution has been read and needs to be voted on.
I would note that the resolution which was just presented, which has not been seconded,
I second the resolution.
would take away the right given by the state legislature in the direction of the state legislature as to how a supervisor is to be selected. It is the town board and the town clerk also has a vote in this as well for replacing a supervisor, and that is by state law, and this neither the town board nor the town meeting has the authority to change that. The other thing the town can do is to leave the supervisor position vacant, and that's sometimes done when it's toward the end of a term. Here, it's obviously in the beginning of a term, so it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Or to wait until the next election, which I think in Tony's position would be 2 more years.
Correct.
I just want to say something from how I read the resolution, that technically that resolution from January 2018 doesn't actually partake in the situation, just for the fact is Tony Haig did not actually get sworn in after this election. So technically, if you read what was written in this new resolution, it would be, and if you go back into the January of 2018, the video on YouTube, Linda actually did clarify that it would be to fill up the rest of his term. Technically, Tony passed away at the end of his term because he wasn't sworn in for a new term. Technically, that resolution would end up as of today when a new Board of Supervisors would be sworn in. And I'm not a legal person, but that's how I read it.
Neither, excuse me, neither is Linda. The information and advice we've been given is as Randy stated. We can either choose to appoint someone to the position, we can choose to leave the position vacant, we can choose to call another election, and I believe it's within 1 year. And there would be another election within 1 year, next April.
Next year.
Oh. And the other thing that was inside, just a couple footnotes to the resolution. Both of the parties involved in this resolution were at the January 18 meeting, and neither expressed any concern. And the second caveat was that inside the resolution was a footnote that said the person that would be appointed needed to have 30% of the vote, in which case no one on that list under that resolution would have met that category. They would not have met the 30%. So, yes.
So, Mr. Stavinus, how does it feel that it fell just perfect for you to get your seat back under the 2004 resolution when last year Dan changed that?
An opinion is not relevant, so.
No, it's not relevant. I'd love to say it, but unfortunately, your attorney's sitting here. You're kind of a shyster, Dan. Including your attorney. You guys just figure out how to weasel out of everything. No responsibility.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. We just had an election 2 weeks ago, correct? If someone wanted to, if you're going to solicit people for this position, if they wanted this position, this election was 2 weeks ago, why would these people that you are going to solicit not put their hat in the ring to run for this election? So what it seems to me is what's happening is, I mean, it is completely unfortunate what Tony passing away, and there's no doubt no one has any ill feelings towards anyone about that. But I think it is completely wrong that you would go out and solicit people this close to an election to fill that seat. It almost seems like you are handpicking your board. That's not why we have elections. I mean, if you could handpick your board, why do we even have an election? Why did we waste our time throwing our hat in the ring for this election, for this unfortunate event that happened this close, for you guys to go and handpick or solicit? Obviously, you're going to solicit who you would like to sit in that seat. Why is that okay?
As I understand it,
go ahead,
Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your thoughts. Unfortunately, I think we're all constrained by what the state statutes require of us. It's got little to do with what we would like. It's got if the preceding resolution were in force and hadn't been modified in January of last year, my impression is we still couldn't observe it because it's contrary to state law. I think as I understand it, a person who's elected to a position but is unable to take it through death, as an example, constitutes a vacancy. and then you switch to another section of the state statutes that says, in the course of filling a vacancy on a town board, you have certain alternatives. And we really don't have any discretion in that regard. So I think that, you know, we couldn't accommodate you even if we wanted to, because we are all bound by the state statute.
Okay. Let me ask you a question about that. Then the resolutions that Mr. Werfel drew up in 2004 and then revised last year, you can't do anything about them, so why did he bring those resolutions up? Because you're not bound by his decision or his resolution, you're telling me it's what the state statute says. So why did you waste your time writing those resolutions?
Hey, maybe I didn't know. It was 2004.
You had to have known if you tried to revise it last year.
Well, those are also policy resolutions, the direction that the town has chosen in advance to take in certain things, which can never override state statutes.
So those resolutions were...
They can be used to the extent that they don't override a state statute.
Well, they do override the state statutes.
See, they could in certain circumstances, and in those circumstances, the resolutions could not be followed.
So we have a handpicked board.
We have not decided on the process for backfilling the position. We will address that at the end, normal town meeting. So, all right. Anything else? All right. So we're going to wrap this one up. The announcements, so that you're aware of it, is the 2019 open book will be Friday, May 31st at 10 a.m. And the board review is Monday, June 24th, beginning at 1 p.m. We will adjourn the annual meeting to April 21st, 2020, which is the third Tuesday in April. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
Mr. Chairman, before that, I
Yes.
just got a question about the agenda.
Go ahead.
It says resolutions in written form only. Do we have a written form
I
for the
assume,
last resolution?
I assume that it is in written form.
Okay.
So,
I'll second it.
motion by Chuck, second by Laddie to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.